What's up, nerds, and welcome to What's So Good About, a video series where we dive into a game and let you know why it deserves your attention. Today, we're talking about Saints Row Remastered, the definitive edition of the 2011 open-world gangster third-person shooter. Originally developed by Volition and published by Deep Silver, Saints Row takes the series to new heights of absurdity while still keeping one foot planted in reality. So my favorite thing about Saints Row might just be its story. It kind of goes all over the place. You never really know where a mission is going to go. The story sort of grabs your attention immediately. If you played Saints Row 1 and Saints Row 2, you will remember the 3rd Street Saints as this kind of petty gangster organization that's trying to rise above their means. Since Saints Row 2, the Saints have grown into these multinational celebrities. So you start out the game with these crazy over-the-top commercials, and you just see that the Saints have really embraced this celebrity nature, but they're still trying to be gangsters. So you start out trying to rob this huge bank, and unlike most criminals who rob banks in disguises, you rob it disguised as yourself. So you can tell immediately that this story is just going to be insane, and it just gets crazier the further that you go. You know, the very first mission, you're jumping from plane to plane, shooting things in midair, grabbing people, dropping people. It's true insanity. And it just gets crazier from there. You know, you're fighting giant brute monsters that are cloned from this giant brute monster of a man that ends up joining your team, and you go into VR and literally play as a toilet and a blow-up doll, and you even fight zombies for your mayor, who's Burt Reynolds. I mean, this game is just absurdity to the max. Now, a lot of people could find that annoying or immature, but I think it works perfectly. It's the kind of story that a middle schooler could get behind and find hilarious, but also adults like myself can play and be like, wow, this is hilarious. It really gives you a chance to take a break from the seriousness of video games or just the seriousness of life and really just let go for a little bit. Now, the story couldn't be so amazing if it wasn't for the likable characters. One of the best things about Saints Row is the cast that surrounds you, the boss. First of all, Saints Row is a game where you get to create your own character, but unlike many character-created games where that character is just a, emotionless, lifeless, voiceless insert, the boss actually has personality. Now, there's like 7 different voices that you can use, really only 6, because there's 3 male voices, 3 female voices, and then like a zombie voice, which is funny to choose, but doesn't really make much sense story-wise. No matter which voice that you choose, you're going to get a really great performance, and the boss is hilarious and likable, again, whether they're male or female or a zombie. Now, the boss is surrounded by a bunch of amazing characters. Johnny Gat, who really isn't in this game that much, but is still really cool and memorable. Shaundi, who's this really strong, badass female character. Pierce, who's kind of a douchebag, you just want to punch Pierce in the face, but also he's one of your best friends through the whole story. And you're constantly introduced to awesome characters that you want to get to know, like Angel, voiced by Hulk Hogan of all people, who is just this really likable wrestler. And then you've got Kenzie, who's an ex-CIA, FBI hacker kind of person who joins your team and is like the outcast to society, but is absurd in all the right ways. Even the villains that you fight, such as Killbane, are just so hateable. It's perfect. All of these characters' writing, along with their voice performances, just make them a great foil to this absurd story and really give you something to latch on to. Now, while Saints Row might not have the biggest open world in gaming, it certainly has a fun one. The game takes place in Steelport, which is like an amalgamation of a bunch of American cities. I think it's based off New York and Chicago and I think something else, but it's a lot of fun to explore. It might not be the most unique open world, but it has a lot to like. It feels like, especially in the beginning, there's always something to discover, whether there's a collectible around one corner or a shop to buy or an activity to take part in, or maybe even just a gang operation to break up. There always seems like there's something to do in the open world, which makes the whole experience just a lot of fun. Now, of course, this is a video game we're talking about, so it can't rest on its story alone. It's also got to have an engaging gameplay, which Saints Row does. It plays pretty much as any third-person shooter would, with kind of a strange control scheme, but it's something that you'll get used to pretty quickly. Even though the game's gameplay doesn't reinvent the wheel, it's still a ton of fun. One of the best things about the gameplay is the progression system. As you play, obviously you're going to gain money for doing missions, doing tasks, and you'll also gain respect, which is how you can gain upgrades. And you purchase upgrades through your phone, and so constantly as you're going through the game, you're gaining more and more abilities, and you're getting, more health. You can sprint longer. You'll be able to dual wield some weapons. You'll get more ammo. So as you play, you feel yourself become stronger as the Saints slowly take over more of the Steelport. This progression is part of what I really like about the game. So while at the beginning you are still this badass, but you kind of feel weak, like you can be killed very easily. But at the end, you are an unstoppable badass, like this force of nature that cannot be taken down. Speaking of the gameplay, one of the best things about Saints Row is how, as I've mentioned, how absurd it is. And this isn't only in the story, but also in the weapons that you can get. You can get some really crazy weapons. You've got the usual pistols, assault rifles, rocket launchers, but then along with the DLC and even just in game, you get some really crazy stuff like a rocket launcher that shoots mind-controlling octopi that launch onto people's heads and make your enemies your allies. There's a shotgun that won't kill people instantly. It will just make a shark appear from nowhere and kill your enemies. It's this kind of absurdity that, it plays really well with the story. It's like, of course the Saints would have access to a shark that just appears out of nowhere. Don't ask questions, it's just fun. And on top of that, even, what I consider to be probably the most recognizable absurd weapon from the game is the dildo bat that you unlock pretty early on. Just because how many other good games can you say that you can wield a dildo and kill people with them, and this huge dildo? I don't know, it's crazy, it's absurd, it's amazing. It's one of the reasons I really like the game. Now, on top of the gameplay that's so much fun, there's all these side activities that I mentioned earlier that kind of dot the city. As you do these, you'll slowly, quote unquote, gain more control over the territories of Steelport. And luckily, most of these activities are a ton of fun. For instance, there is a Professor Ginky's Murder Time Fun Time, which is a game show that's insane, where you're having to kill all of these mascot furry characters just to gain more money and survive this kind of gauntlet of traps. I've always really enjoyed that one. I just think it's, again, an absurd, over-the-top game show idea that would totally exist in the world of Saints Row. You've got Tank Mayhem, which is a classic where you just get into a tank and you have to destroy as much as possible in the time allowed. One of the best things about these open-world games is just causing destruction, whether it's Saints Row, Grand Theft Auto, or Red Dead. Sometimes getting your notoriety as high as possible and just having the most police on you, or gangs, such as in this game, is just a ton of fun. So Tank Mayhem is a great way to do that. One of the most memorable side activities is Insurance Fraud, which is a mode where you gain the ability to ragdoll, and the whole point is just to gain as much insurance fraud money by faking accidents. When you start this activity, cars begin to rush by super fast, and you just have to take as much damage as possible to gain as much insurance fraud money as possible. And it's a ton of fun. Watching your boss just flail all over the place and take damage is a great time. Even some of the lesser activities that are a little, less fun, sometimes get a little bit tedious, are still enjoyable. The Guardian Angel mode or the Tiger Escort. They might not be the most fun activity to do for hours on end, but these missions never really last more than 5 minutes, so it's still a good way to pass the time. Now, the reason I'm talking about Saints Row the Third Remastered as opposed to just the original release is because this is actually a good remaster of the game. What it did get, this remaster, is actual better graphics. So it's awesome to see all of the main characters and main villains have brand new character models that just look fantastic. They obviously aren't the height of graphical luxury, but they look so much better than they did on the 360 and PS3. It's really great to see the team behind the remaster actually going out of their way to create a somewhat different experience. On top of this, all of the gun models and all of the vehicle models have been completely reworked for the remaster, and it's noticeable. These models look so much better, and like I mentioned, it's just really great to see the team actually trying to put out a remaster instead of just doing a simple port, because they could have just ported the game and people like myself would have bought it anyways, but it's great to see that we actually have something new to play around with. The Saints Row series is no stranger to DLC, so this port of the remaster is the port of the Definitive Edition, the Game of the Year Edition or whatever, so it comes with 3 fun story DLCs, one that's centered around Professor Ginky, one that's centered around clones of Johnny Gat, and one that's centered more around the gangsters in space movie idea that you kind of see a little bit at the end of the at one of the endings of the game. A lot of DLC in games feels kind of unnecessary, and this is just a great way to get even more absurdity out of the series. And as I keep mentioning, the game is absurd, it's crazy, but it isn't too much, which is what I and a lot of Saints Row fans feel happened with Saints Row 4. Saints Row 4 really jumped the gun. In this game, it's like, oh my gosh, it's crazy. You've got zombies and like you're going to the virtual world, and that's insane. But also, you're still a real person. You're still driving cars. You're not invincible unless you turn on the invincible cheats. But in Saints Row 4, you get superpowers. You become the president. The world is destroyed. There are aliens. It's really too much. So Saints Row the Third is the perfect way to experience the series without it really feeling like it's jumped the shark. So yeah, if I was asked to sum up what is so good about Saints Row the Third, I would say, of course, the absurd story. You never know what's going to happen. The likable characters that add to the story. The fun open world. The entertaining gameplay and the great progression system. The fun side activities. The remaster is actually a remaster with better graphics and improved textures, and the DLC is a lot of fun. So yeah, if you liked this video about what's so good about Saints Row the Third Remastered, you can check out our full actual review of the game at noisypixel.net. And hey, if you did like this video, make sure to subscribe for more.